Can posture affect our digestion? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Minke. This is Minke Wellness. So let's look at posture considering mostly sitting posture. And I'm here, changed my environment if you notice the background difference, but I wanted to just show you sitting at a desk, okay? But I'm going to address the issue or the connection between bad posture and impact on our digestion, okay? So we've just talked about how the digestive system is basically a tube, and it tends to be a rather mushy, flexible, not very, it doesn't have a lot of structure to it. It's this kind of soft tube that runs in 32 feet through from mouth to anus. So really there's very little internal support for that tube except for what we have in our structure. In other words, it hangs off of the spine in particular, with the meninges all attached into there, the visceral attachments. But what I'm saying is this whole system really gets its shape by our shape of our body, right? So if our body is hunched over, then we're going to crunch down on our digestive tube. If our body is upright, then we're going to get that get a longer, more open tube. Okay, so let's look at this in terms of what kinds of things can be affecting our posture, or affecting our digestion in the context of posture. And we're really going to address two issues: what happens in our mouth and throat, right? So for chewing and swallowing, and then what happens at the diaphragm level, which is the hiatal area, the hiatal or what they call hiatal hernia, and where the stomach starts punching through the diaphragm, okay? So these are two areas that, as a body worker, I've been doing body work for 20 years, and seeing a lot of posture and a lot of situations where people are really compromising, in my opinion, really compromising the digestion because of their shape, their body shape. So I'm going to show you the kind of visual of how this is impacting things, and then show you a few tips on how to change it. But ultimately, you might have to get a little bit more some professional help on how to change this. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to back up just a little bit, and I'll talk a little louder because I don't have a mic on me, so it's just what you can hear in here. So what I've got, right now I'm going to show you good posture. Good sitting posture is with my pelvis slightly higher than my knees. I know that you've probably seen the model for 90-90-90. Throw that model out. I'm going to sit with my pelvis slightly higher than my knees, with my pelvis rolled slightly forward, not too forward. But I don't want to be back here either. So if my pelvis is more forward, and then my whole body at a slight forward tilt. Okay, so this is this alignment that I want to see here, especially if I'm active and I'm working on a desk or keyboard or whatever. So here's the keyboard. Now this obviously changes radically as I change the height of my chair, and so I'm going to show you what happens if I'm sitting way too low, right? So here I'm sitting about with maybe I'll put my pelvis at level. This is the level 90-degree angle, and I don't know if you can tell this, but I'm immediately falling off of my pelvis. So I'm sitting here down here, and there is just, unless I have this something sticking in my lumbar, I'm really not. I've created this total compression across my whole abdominal cavity, which is crunching down the tube. Now, here's the problem with this: is you say, okay, that's all lower digestion, but look what happens to this here. I'm pulling this down, and so unless my keyboard and unless my screen is down here, then I have to actually tilt my head up in order to see the screen, okay? And as I'm doing that, I'm creating compression that runs across here and affecting the jaw. And so you can actually start to pull your jaw out of alignment with the head position like this. So this head position with the head in what would be extension would retract to the jaw, and I would create an overbite. If I'm in the other type of position where this is inflection, where I'm sitting like this all the time, and some people have, if you're doing a lot of your work at a device that's now being held down here, you're creating this very tight flexion in the neck and head and neck, and that's going to create the jaw to push out. So I'm going to have an underbite if I'm positioned like this. I'm going to have an overbite if I'm positioned like this. So what I'm saying is the shape or the support that you get from below is going to dictate what the shape or support of what's happening up here, okay? Now this can have a dramatic effect on our digestion because it affects our chewing. it affects our bite. If the bite gets thrown off, then I don't chew very well, or I'm inclined not to chew very much because it hurts to chew, and it might be a very subtle message that you might be in a very subtle way saying, I don't want to chew because it hurts. And you know, then we're not going to be chewing our food properly, and then of course we have complications from that, where the too big of a chunk of food hits the stomach and it doesn't get properly digested. All that poorly digested material leaks into the small intestine and stresses out makes it acidic and stresses out the whole environment down there, and ferments undigested food in the gut, ending up a leaky gut, etc., etc. Okay, so you can see the whole cascade down the road. So some might say, well, I can fix my bite problem, or you might go to the dentist and say, I want to fix my bite problem by grinding teeth down or moving teeth around. That would be a second choice, because I really want to make sure that I'm getting my postural things aligned, my head, neck, and chest aligned before doing any teeth pulling, grinding, or anything like that. So I definitely don't want to make permanent changes to the bite, certainly not jaw-breaking kind of situations, without making some changes to the whole structure. Now, there may be certain circumstances where the structure cannot change, and you know, fusions or whatever, and then you know, you have other recourses to that. But what I'm saying is those kinds of permanent changes should be carefully considered after doing some kind of alignment of body work. Okay, so you can see I'm sitting here too low, my pelvis is tipped down, I'm crunched down. Obviously it's going to affect my breathing. We've talked about this before in the breathing, but it's now affecting my digestion, okay, and I really am not getting good blood circulation, everything's coming crunched, okay, so this is not where I want to be. It also, the diaphragm now, I can't breathe with my diaphragm, I have to breathe with my chest, so I'm decreasing my oxygen, and all the consequences go with that. You can go back and look at that in the respiratory system. So, one simple solution is to bring your chair up, okay, and so you can see what happens immediately to the length of this right in here. From the distance from here to here comes immediately up and open. I can breathe. I can actually breathe with my diaphragm, and so bringing your chair up to having your pelvis higher than your knees, okay, so that there's a slight downhill thing here. Now I'm in a situation where my pelvis is supporting the volume. It's much harder to sit down, crunch down like this. Let me show you this again. So as I go down, it's easier and easier to fall way back here. As I come up, it's much harder. I can still do it, but it's much harder to sit back here. It's much easier to sit here. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sit on the front part of my chair and give me this tilt off the edge to allow a more tendency to be more forward. Okay, so this on the edge of the seat. You might recognize this kind of sitting posture to be relevant to choir. Okay, if you ever were in choir, they taught you to sit on the edge of your seat, drop your knees. That's exactly what we're doing. And the reason that helps with choir is because now you can breathe, and you have breath support, and you can breathe with your diaphragm. Well, if you can breathe, you can probably digest as well. In other words, it's one big package, right? So good for breathing is also good for digestion, and of course now we've got the diaphragm is actually working and doing its thing to massage the liver, etc. Okay, so remember we talked about sphincters. We've got the sphincter, the mouth is a sphincter, and the top sphincter, cardiac sphincter of the stomach, okay, is the one that ends up having trouble as I hinge forward. If I hinge over this sphincter here, I'm going to put pressure on that as I come down on it. The other thing that happens with the downward pressure from above is if my arms are overworking in my desk situation. So again, if I'm sitting too low and I have to lift my arms in order to do my typing, then that lifting and work actually creates a downward compression against my stomach, and that's increasing the tension and definitely going to aggravate that situation right there at the hiatal hernia. So I definitely want to get my chair higher. I want to relax my shoulders and lend my arms. And it might be that if my desk is too high, even then, if I'm a shorter person and I've got my chair as where I can be, and my feet are still touching the floor, but my desk is too high, either you can need to get one of those under the desk keyboard trays, or build a platform underneath or saw the desk legs off to bring the desk down to match your height if you're a shorter person. And so if you're a taller person, then generally just getting a chair tall enough is a challenge, and you have to go to almost something like the stool that goes high enough that you can actually get this position from above your work. But you definitely want to be above your work, no matter what your height is. You want to be above your work with your arms gently moving downward at slightly downward slope so that they rest easily. You do not want to lift with the shoulder system, and that puts a huge amount of downward pressure. It also builds all that tension across the throat and neck that we've talked about that can restrict the neck, the breathing, but also the chewing and swallowing. There are people that actually have problems swallowing and end up getting their throat stretched and things like that. And what that is coming from a compression of the body down through here. And so I definitely want to maintain this support from below. You remember the nudge? The push, 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 right? Where I'm pushing from below, pushing from below. Look at what happens to my length, right, as I push, right? As I push up, I'm getting longer. Like my head gets longer, I'm getting longer. So I can push up that line, push, 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 right? And this is the same position. I need to be able to feel that as I'm sitting in order to have good digestion. So I'm not advocating, doing all this pushing while you're trying to digest. What I'm saying is, this is the same. You can, if you notice I'm teaching the same thing over and over, it's because this is really the thing you need to learn, okay? And I don't care what context it is, whether you're sitting at your desk or you're doing the nudge or you're doing it for breathing, this is what you need to do. Okay, so if you want to get more information from Judith Aston and the Aston Kinetics website, I'll put a link in this video for that. If I don't remember the link, then comment on it and I'll remember to put the link in there. Okay, so I hope this has been clear, visually. Okay, so I want to sit, again, with my pelvis higher than the knees. I want to sit on the front of my chair or stool. Some people say, well, I need a back, I need to rest my back. When you're working up forward and you're leaning over your work, you probably won't need as much back support. When you do take a break from that for a moment, it's okay to scooch back and rest against the back of the chair. In my case, I don't use a back chair. I don't have a back on the chair. I just use stools. And so for me, resting is this. This is resting. I'm very comfortable. I've worked very hard to get my body aligned and supported through the Aston-Patterning work. And so this is where I am comfortable. This works. So I don't need a back on the chair. But if you do, then you can always do that when you need to rest or take a break for a moment and pull back. So again, remember that your arms can't be doing this and expect to have healthy digestion, because it's going to put that compression from above, and we're also going to be affecting our chewing and our swallowing. So in order to have healthy digestion, not only for what's happening down here, but also at these sphincter points right across the diaphragm and then up at the mouth and throat, we want to maintain this position with the pelvis slightly more forward so we can drop the pelvis in the front. We don't want to be sitting back like this. With the pelvis slightly more forward, we want to feel that length, sit on the front of the chair, sit with the pelvis higher than the knees, and that gives me that support, okay? So I hope that's been useful. Throw me some comments if you need some more clarity on this. We can do this we can do another tutorial if we need to, but this is the basics for making sure you're not hurting yourself in terms of digestion. Now, what if you can't approximate these things? You can't, your pelvis doesn't go any farther than this, your pelvis doesn't move at all. If you can't do this with your pelvis, then you do need to get some body work and stretch and do some yoga or whatever it is that you're going to do to open up the hips and allow yourself to get that movement. Now, if you've been fused or something like that, you just do the best you can, you get as far as you can, but then probably going to need some body work, Aston-Patterning work, Rolfing, good quality massage work in some fashion, okay? So anyway, I hope, again, this has been helpful to you. Happy wellness. Tomorrow we're going to talk about our supplement program, so come back tomorrow and we'll go over that for the supplements for digestion. Happy wellness.